Hi, we have a new pattern. It's Ella, and it's a sweet peasant blouse or peasant dress. But we're already thinking of different things we can do with Ella. It's a very quick, easy to sew pattern, so it's great for beginners. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do a nightgown and PJs. And when I make a nightgown, I don't want it to take a lot of time, or PJs, I don't want it to take a lot of time. And so Ella is perfect for that. So what you're going to need is you'll need your front, your back, and your sleeve for Ella. Ella also comes with what we're calling a faux placket, and we're not going to be using that today, but Melissa has done a great tutorial video that she gives you some great hints, especially if you're sewing on knit. But even if you're not sewing on knit, look at her video, and it'll explain some things a little deeper than what the instructions do. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to trace your front and your back. Whether you're doing the PJ top or the gown, you're going to trace it. And with the video, you have a page that you can print off, or you can just view it while you're doing your changes. And so you'll have charts with measurements, and what you will have is you will have a chart that shows how long to lengthen the dress for a gown. And this gown is going to have a ruffle on it too, so it's not lengthened very much, but you'll have that to go by. So you'll lengthen, if you're making a gown, you'll lengthen it, and you'll look at the chart for that. And then if you are making PJs, then you're going to be making a top. So you will go to the line that is on the pattern that refers to the cutting line for the blouse. And you will measure up from that cutting line a distance. This is a 24 months, and I'm going to measure up 3 inches. But look at your chart for your size and make those 2 changes on your pattern. That's all you have to do. It won't take long for that. And then the sleeve is just the pattern itself. We don't make any changes at all on the sleeve. So the other thing that is on the chart is the depth or the length for the ruffle, whether it's at the bottom of the gown or the bottom of the PJs. It's 2 different measurements, so be sure you look at the right one. And so you'll be cutting strips for the ruffle, and what you'll do is you'll measure the bottom of the front and the bottom of the back of either your gown or your PJ top, and then you will take that length and multiply it by 1.75, and that'll give you the length of your ruffle. It's kind of confusing because it's really the width of the ruffle, because we usually cut ruffles on perpendicular to the selvage. And so the length is what is in your chart. The width is what you'll determine by taking that measurement of the bottom of the garment and multiplying that by 1.75. And that'll all be explained also in the PDF that you have there in front of you. So after you have done that, I'm just going to go through one more thing, and then we'll stop and you can get everything cut out. After you have your ruffles cut out, go ahead and hem one long edge of your ruffle. The ruffle for the PJ top and the ruffle for the gown, whichever one you're making, go ahead and hem it. And it's just going to be a tiny shirt tail hem, so it'll just be pressed 1/8, then 1/8 again, and top stitched. You may have a rolled hem foot for your sewing machine that does that for you. If you do, that's great, use that. If you have a serger and you just want to put a rolled hem at the bottom of the ruffle instead of doing all that pressing, you can do that too. So now that you've got your ruffle hemmed, I didn't mention earlier sewing the 2 pieces together so that you have one long ruffle. And you certainly can do that, and maybe you did. The reason I didn't was because I was using my rolled hem foot, and I struggle with getting it to look nice at a seam when I'm using that foot. So I just chose to wait and connect the 2 ruffles together after I had my hem on that edge. And then you will put 2 rows of gathering threads, a lengthened stitch of about 4, 1/8 of an inch from the top, and then again about 3/8 of an inch from the top, because you will have that'll be a 1/4 inch seam. So we're going to put that aside for a second, and I'm pretty much just following the directions step by step in that comes with Ella. And the next thing we have you do is to press the edges of each piece separately, the top edges for the casing. So before I did my seams, I pressed 1/4 of an inch, and then you have a fold line, and you're going to press on that fold line and then unfold it. And the reason we do that is it just seems easier to go ahead and do that when they're separate pieces than when it's in a circle. So if you prefer to stitch it first and then press it, you certainly can. It does not make a difference. So after you do that, well, before we go on to that, the PJs I'm making are out of knit. One of the great things about Ella is you can use any fabric. You can use knit or a woven fabric. But before you start pressing the edges on a knit for the top neck edge or for at the sleeves, there's a note. Let's see, it is right there at step 4, right below step 4, there's a note specifically for knit, and we have you go ahead and trim off 1/4 of an inch that you normally on the woven you'll be pressing under, but this reduces bulk, and like I'm sure you know, knit doesn't fray, so you can leave that edge unfinished, which is what I'm going to do. Or if you have a serger, you could serge that edge first, but I've gone ahead and trimmed and pressed the top, and you can see that it really looks pretty neat just like that. And so your first stitching is going to be really close to that cut edge, and so like I said, if you want to just leave it a unfinished edge, it'll be fine. That's what I'm going to do. So you will have you'll be doing step 4, and then step 5 is stitching the sleeves to the front and to the back of the dress. And this is a raglan sleeve, so if you smock or have ever made a bishop dress, it's constructed a little bit like a bishop in that way, that the sleeves are sewn in so that there really isn't any kind of shoulder seam. So I finished these edges with my serger. You could trim them and finish them with just a zigzag, and then also back to the knit, you don't have to do anything to those seams. What I'm going to do is, after I have my sleeve stitched in, I'm going to trim it with my rotary cutter to about 1/8 of an inch, and just leave them. Just press it like the instructions say. You press the seams toward the sleeves. So let's see. Let's go ahead and do that much, and then we will be ready to stitch the casing and then the side seam. Okay, now that you've got your sleeves in and your casing pressed for the neck edge, we're ready to stitch the casing. So I have marked my center back, and for the first stitching line, you're going to stitch really close to that folded edge right there, and you're going to leave an opening for the elastic. So leave about 1/2 inch opening, but stitch starting at the center back, stitch all the way around, and stop about 1/2 inch before you get back to your beginning. And then the next stitching will be 3/8 of an inch up from that first. So, and then this one, you will actually stitch all the way around. And then that forms your casing for the elastic. So after you've done that, and I've gone ahead and done that with my knit, And you can see it stays a fairly nice edge right there, even though that's actually a raw edge that's not pressed under. So I've got my casing ready, and then the next thing we're going to do is one side seam. And I've done that. And the reason we're just going to do one is because we're going to put the ruffle on with the garment flat and then do that second side seam after the ruffle's on. So speaking of your ruffle, take your ruffle and where the seam is, fold it in half right there where that seam is, and then fold it in half again. And then that will give you another point where you can make a couple of blue marks. I've got them on here, but they're not very dark. On both of those folds in there, be sure that you mark those, because what I'm going to have you do is also mark the center front and center back of your gown or of your PJ top. So I've got it marked along this bottom edge at the center front and center back. So once you start gathering your ruffle, you will have some placements that will keep you from having your ruffle too flat in one area or too full in another. So you'll be matching. You'll start at one edge, the edge that isn't stitched, the side seam that isn't stitched yet, and then you'll have a mark on your ruffle for placing it on the center front, and then you'll have the seam of the ruffle that will go with the side seam, and then on the other side you will have another mark and another mark on your ruffle, so that you can get a nice even ruffle around the bottom. So I think that's enough to do, and then when we come back we will we'll do our other side seam, and then we'll finish the casings for the sleeve, and then we'll just be finishing up. Okay, so we've got our ruffles on now. I've gone ahead and done my other side seam now that the ruffle is on, and I've put the elastic in the neckline for both the pajama shirt and for the nightgown, and then you will do the casing for the sleeves the very same way. I use just a small safety pin to run the elastic through. Sometimes you may have a bodkin or something like that that you can use as well, and then I just pull the two ends of the elastic out, and then I'll just zigzag over the overlapped elastic to hold it in place, and then finish out that casing. So this really didn't take very long at all, but I did want to show you that for the pajama top, we needed some pants, and I used Parker's pants and used the shorts, and we have a blog that tells you how to put the band around the bottom, which I think makes it super cute. You also could just use regular shorts, regular Parker shorts, or long pants for cooler weather. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you will have fun making Ella in all sorts of different ways.